Let's you and I not mince words. In today's day and age, where Washington and Brussels is breathing down the neck of every car company to move to EVs on a rather unrealistic time schedule, it takes the balls the size of pumpkins for a car manufacturer to introduce a rally-inspired hot hatch in this environment. Now, let's understand why that's important. The first stop on the journey as to why this is important resides underneath the hood. This is not just a turbocharged engine, it's a turbocharged engine that people around the world already kind of understand. It is the G16E-GTS, otherwise known as a turbocharged three-cylinder engine from the GR Yaris. Here, 300 horsepower, 273 pound-feet of torque, but that's not the most interesting part. A couple of other things going on here. Number one, the turbocharger, which is a single-scroll turbo, is integrated into the exhaust manifold. Then while we're talking about the exhaust, that's not like the usual exhaust we get, like a sport exhaust where it makes all sorts of noises. This is a triple exhaust, and the reason why they did that is to reduce the back pressure. Now let's downshift into an aspect that may be considered more pedestrian, and that would be the fuel injection system, both direct injection as well as port injection. Then we move on to getting more air into the engine that is not the turbocharger. There it's 4 valves per cylinder, but remember, it's a 3-cylinder engine, so it's 12 valves in total. Then there's the business of the transmission. And there, anything you want as long as it's a manual transmission. However, Kumo did some digging. He found there were some test mules, at least pictures of test mules floating around with what looked to be an automatic in one of these vehicles. Can't confirm or deny. So who knows, there may be a future derivation of this with a dual clutch automatic, only time will tell. Then while we're on the topic of getting power from the engine to the wheels, another spot of interesting news. It is all-wheel drive, unlike other Corollas. And it's not like all-wheel drive in the vein of like a Golf R where it could send up to 50% of the power to the rear wheels. This, the driver can select how much torque goes to the different sets of wheels, but not in like an E63S or an M5 kind of way. Here, it can be 50-50, or it can be 60 in the front, 40 in the back, or my favorite, it can be 70 in the back, 30 in the front. And this is where we get to the point of construction, because after all, it is based on a box standard Corolla, which would bring us to the obvious question of what is the weight of a box standard Corolla? It's about 3,000 pounds, but this sadly, it's a little bit more weight, 3,249 pounds, or depending on express your weights and measures, 1,474 kilograms. But then that brings us to the construction, because after all, the focus here was to make this a stronger, a more rigid vehicle. So now here we need to discuss there are two different versions of this vehicle. There's a core and a launch edition. So basically on all of them, they have aluminum doors and an aluminum hood. And then the construction itself, there's more weld points, and they use more structural adhesives, kind of like Lotus. Then on the fancy model, this launch edition, they have a carbon fiber roof. Now, putting all of that together, what's underneath the vehicle, and there we have struts in the front with a stabilizer bar, and in the back, double wishbones. This is a huge kind of nod to what this vehicle is trying to be, and that is somewhat of a heritage rally car, or something that's going to replace WRX STIs in the future. Then the wheels themselves, 18 inches, and then look at the brakes. This is a 14-inch diameter rotor in the front with 4 piston calipers in a Toyota Corolla, and then come on to the back here, 11.7-inch diameter rotors. Call me crazy, but I find that fascinating in a Toyota Corolla. Then one last item in terms of construction. Again, with this fancy launch edition, it has a rear spoiler that separates it from the standard core edition. Then looking at the hood, remember we talked about this being aluminum? The fancy launch edition, this one has these vents here, but these can be removed to add more intake of air into the engine compartment. Inside, it kind of looks like every other Corolla you've seen in the past. However, there are a couple of small differences. Like, for example, there's a 12.3-inch TFT screen that has a 4-wheel drive meter. And then on this one, this fancy launch edition, it's got suede seats instead of cloth seats. And then also on the fancy launch edition, there's this shifter here that is signed by, again, I'm going to try to pronounce this, Maurizio. That sounds too Italian, it doesn't sound Japanese. Basically, Akio Toyota, that's his alter ego. I find this a unique touch because I feel like the guy who runs the company is actually taking responsibility for this car. So 2 more interesting fun facts. On this special launch edition, it has a front and rear torsion limited slip differential. And then something I find really fascinating, where the car is manufactured. It's not built alongside normal Corollas. It's built in the MotoManTV plant, excuse the pronunciation there. That's where the LFA was made. That's where the GR Yaris is currently made. And that's where the A80 Supra was made. Now let's put aside all of this and let's talk a little bit about why this car exists and how important that is. You look at today's day and age, like this week, literally, I drove the BZ4X and then I came up here and saw this. Like 2 polar opposites. You literally have governments forcing the transition to EVs on an unrealistic timescale. EVs, they're wonderful, but they're going too fast on this. So when you look at a vehicle like this, most car manufacturers are not going to say invest to make something like this that they're going to sell, what, a couple thousand a year? That's why this is important. Because, you know, I talk to you guys a lot about saving money and having money in the bank. That's not just about personal finance, it's about corporate finance. Because if you look at different car companies around the world, you look at like Volkswagen and General Motors, they both have about a $20 billion savings account. That's their kitty, which is good, right? Toyota, $48 billion in the bank, and that's the last time I checked. It's probably more. And that's why this vehicle exists. Because he who has the gold can make the rules. So if the governments are coming after you and saying, you gotta make EVs, well, if you've got some money on the side to develop EVs, you can also take some money out of the bank and make the car you really want. So that brings us to the wish list here. And what can I ask for? Because I know a lot of you are going to piss and moan in the comments, oh my God, it isn't the Yaris, we needed the Yaris. At the end of the day, I don't care. The fact that this thing exists and is coming to my country and I can have a manual transmission, you know what, Europe, you can have the Yaris via con Dios, I'll stick with this. The only thing I'm going to ask here, and I know this is going to sound ridiculous, on the basic, the core model, how about we do a sunroof? That's the only thing I can ask for if I'm getting really greedy. And this is the point of the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, one little fun fact, this is not the studio. Kumo is nowhere near us. And you can see that my shoe choice changed. Did I have a choice in this matter? No, but I wanted to spend some time with this lovely lady.